I'm breaking through.
Hello and welcome to the Business Renovator. I am Coach Phil, and I'm actually quite thrilled to have the lovely Alicia sharing some time with us this morning. But before we do that, what I would like to do is get a word from our sponsor. So if you've ever had a question that you would like to ask a business coach, guess what? I am one. And I happen to be with Focal Point. There's a group of about 200 of us around the globe. So if you have a question around sales, marketing, time management, team issues, or exit strategies, which could be future considerations, you want to expand and grow an ad or franchise, reach out. Information for me will be on at the end of the show. And if I don't have the answer to your question, I can introduce you to one of the other wonderful people part of our network. There is a reason we seek out experts as a headline for our show today, and Alicia is going to help us address that. She's a wonderful woman, lots of energy and lots of experience with, and she wasn't, what's that cliche saying about born with a silver spoon in her mouth? She wasn't born that way. She had a challenging life starting out and moving up to where she is, and she's been on things like Forbes, ESPN, and other great sort of things. So I'm not going to waste any more time talking about her. Let's just meet her. Hello and welcome, Alicia.
Thank you, Phil.
Great to have you here. Hey, is there anything you'd like to add that you want to make sure that people know what you do in terms of your bio background?
Well, so I've been a business mindset coach for over a decade now. As you mentioned, it did not necessarily come easily. I'd like to think that I've earned everything that I've accomplished so far. I've been known as the go-to hypnotherapist for entrepreneurs for many, many years. So yeah, I do a lot of, coachy type of stuff with my clients, but I love to really work with people at that deeper level of the mind with techniques like hypnosis, conversational hypnosis, and NLP, different processes that can help us to make changes at the subconscious level of the mind. And I really do attribute that inner work to the success that I've been able to create for myself.
Sometimes when people hear hypnosis, they panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it something kind of we normally do day to day anyway? Like even just sitting in front of the TV, it's a form of hypnosis.
There's so many myths and misconceptions about hypnosis. In fact, when I had my general hypnotherapy practice, I actually wrote my first book called Hypnosis for Success. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was dispelling the same exact myths and misconceptions over and over and over and over again. So I decided to just put it into a book and just start handing it out to people. But the reality is, hypnosis is a natural, normal state that we go in and out of every day. When you wake up in the morning, you're in a heightened state of suggestibility for that first 15 to 30 minutes, can be up to an hour. You're still somewhat in a higher state of suggestibility. Don't watch the news, right?
Thank you.
Watch and of course, when you're watching a movie, when you're reading a book, fear can be actually a trigger for that heightened state of hypnosis. So if somebody is experiencing some type of health issue, and you're fearful. You schedule an appointment with your doctor, you're sitting in the waiting room, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, what if something's wrong with me, right? You get in with the doctor, you are literally in a hypnotic state. People don't realize this. And you hear about things like somebody getting diagnosed with cancer, and it's not a good prognosis, and they're given 6 months to live. 6 months later, they pass away, and they do an autopsy and find out there was no cancer. It was a misdiagnosis. Well, how did that happen? Now, I'm not saying that just to scare people, but this is just understanding how the mind works. They were in a very, very, very highly susceptible state, and that went in there like a suggestion. And the mind is very powerful. What we believe, what we expect, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for us.
I have heard that before numerous times. And I was trying to recall the one situation where, and I forget who I was listening to or who I had read. I think it was Maxwell Maltz, who was one of the first people in this space of writing easy to read stuff about it. You didn't have to be a doctor. And I think he talked about somebody who was diagnosed with something, a terminal illness, and they got shorten the story, they got the files mixed up. But even though they got the files mixed up and his terminal disease wasn't really him, it was somebody else, he had done what you said. He had bought into it so much that he actually made that happen and passed away. And there was nothing wrong with it, nothing terminally wrong with him. Scary, right? But on the plus side, I was also in Seattle hanging out with one of my mentors, and there was a woman there that was talking on behalf of her husband. He was a prisoner of war in one of the wars. I don't know if it was Vietnam, but I'm going to say it was. And there was two guys that got captured. He was a pilot, and the plane crashed, chute fell, hung him he didn't hang, but hung him up on a tree, and they captured him. And he thought about getting back to his wife and his family more than anything else. So he didn't perish. He ended up at the end of the war, he came back. The other side of that story, though, was there was other people who were in better shape than him physically, but because of their mental weakness, their hypnotic state, perhaps, they perished and died. And I think that was one of the war practices that was implemented by the enemy on purpose. They would provide all sorts of propaganda about how bad it was back home, and all this BS, and they bought into it. And in buying into it, there was no reason to live, carry on.
Mindset is powerful. A lot of times people are setting these goals for themselves, and they're feeling a genuine desire to create more success in life and in business. But if they're really honest with themselves, if they do a genuine, honest assessment of their consistent thinking, their consistent thoughts, they're way more focused on their obstacles than they are about achieving the goal. So when we are reinforcing those negative thoughts over and over and over again, I'm not good at sales, I'm not, nobody likes me, I'm not good enough, whatever, the self-talk is, that is a more dominant mindset than achieving the goal. So you can write down a goal. That's great. That is a good step, right? You've got to have a destination. You've got to know where you're going. But the reality is that if you're not achieving your goal, more than likely, you're more fixated, more focused on why you can't achieve the goal and why you're not achieving the goal than on what are the steps that I can take to create that for myself.
Yeah, touche. I totally agree with that. Is it easy to live that every day for everybody? No, I think everybody's at a different state of that. And I think that's what one of the values of having a coach is for. I know it's a TV show and they can write the script any way they want. And it was, I think it's called The Residence. That's a TV show, right? I think. And there's two surgeons on there, and they hire a coach. The chief executive officer hires a coach to help these surgeons be better surgeons. And they resist having a coach. What do you know about that, right? Anyway, they wrote the story that had a happy ending. And the happy ending was that the surgeons finally realized that it was, instead of resisting, they would pay attention, and they tried the things that the coach suggested. Because the coach wasn't just a coach, didn't have any experience. She was a surgeon, but she realized her skill set wasn't surgery, it was helping people. And this is kind of what you do, kind of what I do, only not in the hospital space, in a surgical arena, in the operating room. But they were able to take the ideas that she suggested, just little tweaks. And in the little tweaks, they were able to do a much better they were more better at doing the surgery. And it was just subtle things, changing a hand, doing this, asking for help from others instead of being that it's me, I'm the only one who can do this. They opened up. And yes, it was written, but there's a lot of truth to that, to get people out of their own space, to open up to possibilities. And when you talk about the hanging on and looking at, like you said, I said thank you at the beginning. You said, don't watch the news in the morning. I'm a big advocate of that. I have been for many, many years, and I'm not a hypnotherapist at all, but I just know garbage in, garbage out. That's computer talk, but this thing is kind of like a computer, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's very much like a computer. The subconscious mind does not say, oh, that's a bad belief. Let's not put that one in there. It doesn't do that. It's just like a computer. It's just whatever you're putting in there, it's in there. So you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, 10, 20, 30 years old doesn't matter. Certainly those early years were even more suggestible than as adults, but it's still all going into the subconscious mind. So if you think of our early years, and the general consensus is up till we're about 7 to 8 years old, we are in that heightened state of suggestibility. We haven't developed what is referred to as the critical filter of the mind. So we are just absorbing everything. I see this with my 3-year-old. She can see something on YouTube, or she can hear us talking about something. She's using adult language, words that some adults don't even know. How does she even know what those things mean? She's just heard them. And then it becomes a part of her way of thinking, her way of being. So those early years are really shaping our programming, right? That operating system, so to speak. But essentially what it comes down to is, even after that critical filter of the mind is developed, and we start to see this when children reach about 8, 9 years old, they're giving a little bit more pushback, right? Now that part of the mind is saying, something about this doesn't add up to me. I don't know if I buy into that anymore. And so even though the information still is getting somewhat planted in the subconscious mind, there's more of that reasoning faculty that is saying, we're not going to give this as much weight. But regardless, right, we've got to look at how much stuff has been influenced into our subconscious mind that really isn't serving us. And we talked a little bit about hangups that people have about sales. So common, right? Mm-hmm. So we were talking, we're pretty much indoctrinated in our culture to perceive sales as a bad thing. Oh, they're just trying to sell me something. Oh, just in it for the money. And there's that value conflict then, because that's programmed into us. So even though we might have some good associations as well, and you can read all sorts of books and you can take all sorts of trainings, and you're just piling on all of this really good stuff, right? I'm going to be a great salesperson, and I'm going to be of service to others, and what I'm doing really is a value and good. But then they've got those old programs in the subconscious mind, and now there's this internal conflict. And if your value system says, well, I'm a good person, well, there's a direct contradiction now in your mind, because if you have a belief that's been implanted in your subconscious mind from maybe unknowingly, it was put in there by your parents or whatever. If that belief is, well, salespeople are bad people, they're just in it for the money, they're trying to sell me something that I don't want or need. And now you have this value that I'm a good person and I want to be a good person and I want to help people. Well, can you see how that would create resistance and self-sabotage? There's a direct conflict there because now part of your mind says, if I'm out there selling my products and services, that I'm a bad person. And even as nonsensical as it is, if we don't address that, if we don't properly release on that old programming, it will continue to trip us up. It'll continue to create self-sabotage.
Right. Which is a really good segue into the title of what we talked the show today is there is a reason we seek out experts. And that's kind of one of the reasons. And it's a value conflict too, right? Because I'm a good person, and then I got this perception of sellers are bad people. So there's an argument, a battle going on, and they don't even realize they're doing it. I was introduced to the idea and the concept of how powerful our subconscious mind is. Actually, they suggested it's a creative subconscious mind, and this role is to keep us in our isness, in our self-image, which is what Dr. Maxwell Maltz talks about a lot. And our self-image is created, as you said, at an early age. And we have all this stuff that's come in. We're like sponges, and we can, just like you were saying, a young person could say something at an adult level in the right context, not understand something about it that maybe it wasn't appropriate to say. How do I know that? I did that. I was upset at I was more than upset at my sister. We were always competitive growing up, and I'd heard something on the street. And a bunch of stuff came together, and she pushed the button, and out came this expression. I'm not going to say it up here because it was totally inappropriate. I got sent to my room. It was so bad. And I hadn't really thought about how powerful it is and how easy it is to get programmed, like you said, at the early ages until later on in life when I started exploring this for myself. And I realized, oh, that happened to me. I actually did that, actually experienced it. And it was the right context, not the right thing to say at any time, even by an adult, right? It was that rude. Anyway, how can we, or how do you, even more importantly, help people in the entrepreneurial space get out of that value conflict that's going on in their lives? Because we did say there is a reason we seek out experts.
So usually we get to a point where we've had enough of our own stuff. Once you've struggled with something long enough and you've, tried to positive talk yourself out of it, and you've read 20 different, personal development books, and things aren't changing, at some point you just almost surrender. Right? It's like you throw your arms up and you're like, okay, there's got to be a better way. That's usually when people find me. Tried all this stuff. Tried all this stuff. Nothing's working. I should be further along than I am by now. What's going on? And it is a process of identifying what is going on in that mind of yours. You'd be surprised how simple it is to identify these things sometimes. Now, not from our vantage point. When we're struggling, it is not easy for us to see it. I like to use an analogy. So we've all experienced this, right? You've got something in your house going on. Maybe an outlet cover got cracked somehow. And when it first got cracked, it really bothered you. You kept seeing it. You're like, ooh, I got to do something about that. I don't like that at all. Right. But after you've seen it enough times, you start to get desensitized towards it. Still there, still broken. You still don't like it, but you actually start to acclimate to that discomfort, that displeasure. So now You can be going through your home and thinking to yourself, oh, I've got company coming over and I really want to get this in tip top shape and looking fantastic, and you're still not noticing it. Okay. So when I'm having a when I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm asking them, what's going on? Tell me what's going on with you, right? They start to go into their story of woe. And I'm listening for little things. And if I ask them, what is it that you really want? Like, tell me, how do you want to feel about that? How would you prefer things to be? It'll be about 2-3 seconds of them starting off good, right? Oh, I'd love for this to be X, Y, and Z. And then they immediately start going into their limitation, why it can't work, the problem. It is insidious, this mental program, right? And I can start to pick out from within that conversation what their triggers are, what their limiting beliefs are. And then we can see, well, you just told me you wanted this, and then you went into this story right here. And now I can see with a lot of clarity where their internal conflict is. And now we can start to shift it. Now we can start to reframe that internal conflict so that we no longer have that internal sabotage going on.
You just took me down a road that I've traveled and I believe in and I've heard before. And it's so true. That's why you're on the show, because one of the things we talk about is mindset. And if we don't change the mindset, the other aspect of this show is about sales and marketing. I guess we could do the marketing. However, even that can be squishy. It makes me think of somebody else, a friend of mine, actually a client, and he'll write a campaign, a drip campaign, and his ask at the bottom, well, I hope you like this, and I hope you, it's like squishy. And we read that, and it doesn't come across as if we're somebody that's highly efficacious and effective, and he actually is. But when you put yourself out there, it's sometimes what you just described shows up, not just in the verbal side, but in the written word as well.
Absolutely. And I say it on my website, mindset accounts for over 90% of the success formula. And the reason that I say that, and I say that with confidence, and it could even be higher, it could be in the upper 90s, because what a lot of people think of when they think of mindset is just positive thinking, positive attitude, that type of stuff. But what you don't understand is exactly what you just said. It comes through in everything. It comes through in the way that we deliver our self to our prospect. It comes across in our marketing. It comes across in whether or not we'll even do the marketing, whether we'll even have the sales call. So it's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to take the actions to get the results you want. And if you do take the actions, you're not going to get the results that you want, because you're going to fall flat on your promise. So there's so many different ways that our mindset influences and affects everything in our life and business.
I just threw this up on a whim because it's one of the, it just resonates with me. And I think this is the business you're in. Steve Jobs suggests that if we're working on something that really excites us and we really care about, we don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls us towards it. And I've had experiences throughout my life where I've actually been able to do that. The challenge that I've had is knowing that if I can get to that point, burning desire, whatever you want to label it, when I get to that point, I'm unstoppable. You can laugh at me, you can call me names. I don't care. I'm on a mission. I'm going here. I'm getting it done. I'm thinking that you could help people bridge that gap from the times when they're actually in the state that Steve Jobs talks about and the time when they're not, like I'm talking about, to help get them to a point where they could be more like the Jobs thing. And even Jim Rohn has a quote: if you want to do something, you'll find a way. And if you don't, you'll find an excuse. And I find you were saying people are focusing in on the problem versus the solution. And you do it through your professional hypnotic expertise, and I do it with a different way. I'm not a hypnotist, but I'm a believer in it because I started this relatively new group. It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's SA, Smokers Anonymous. We don't have meetings, but it's just to remind people that if you're having a challenge, to seek help. I enrolled in a hypnotist group program in my city a whole bunch of years ago. I think it was 12 years ago. And I was a 2-pack a day smoker, and I didn't have a burning desire, but I had somebody who I loved in my life, and she never complained about my smoking in my house. She was there bringing all this crap in. I thought, wow, if she's as important as I say she is, I should probably do something. So I didn't tell anybody. I went to this event. Next thing you know, I'm following the suggestions. He said, the only thing I remember about it there's a bunch of things, but the one thing that was critical of my journey was he was saying, if you've got your cigarettes with you, crush them and throw them in the bins. Now I know why the room had full of all these garbage bins. It was a really tacky looking place, but that was why. I didn't have them with me. They were in the vehicle. I went in my vehicle, crushed them right away. And I was looking for a bin, and I was on a mission. I got rid of them. And, the next day I was essentially a non-smoker, and I have been for like about a dozen years. So if you don't think hypnosis works, well, it does.
A lot of the work that I do with my clients is what I refer to as conversational hypnosis. So it'll seem like we're just having a normal session and we're talking through your stuff, and I'm using different techniques to create shifts at the subconscious level of the mind. When you start to understand how the mind works, it's really fascinating, right? So you may have even heard this. The mind is very symbolic. Think about our dreams. So the way that the subconscious mind works is very much symbolism, numbers, metaphors. Using different analogies can help to create shifts. I love to tell stories that seem unrelated, but are actually the same principle that my client needs to embrace in order to shift what they're holding on to. And the reason that I use stories that sometimes seem unrelated is because, kind of like going back to that analogy that I was using about the outlet cover, right? So you're so conditioned to not even notice that anymore. But now if I can tell you a story about something that is similar but slightly unrelated, and I'm talking about someone else, then you don't have the emotional hang up. And so you can see it more objectively. And ultimately, that's how we need to create some of our shifts, is to see them more objectively, because you'll notice that the things that we're really highly emotionally charged on, we so want to continue buying into our story, and we want everyone else to buy into our story with us because it doesn't feel good. And we really want to justify our limitation, right? Nobody wants to be the person who, is just the slacker, right?
Yeah.
We've got to prove, no, really, you don't understand. That person is just such a-hole, like we've just got to have all of these really good justifications. So when we can see things objectively, and sometimes that means that we have to see it from somebody else's vantage point, then our mind, it's like, can form that little bridge, right? It can bridge that gap, and it could say, oh, I can kind of see how that relates to me. And then we start to let go of our tight grasp on our old excuses and those old stories. That self-image is a big piece of it. Yeah, we are creating exactly what we expect ourselves to be. We've got to change that self-image. If we don't like what we're creating, something's got to change at those deeper levels of the mind.
So would it be fair to say that we don't get what we want so much, but we get what we expect more often?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can all see it. Look in your life, look objectively, honestly, not just in your business, but in your relationships with your body, everything. you get what you expect.
Yeah. Somebody said how you do one thing is how you do everything. And there are clues to it. There's a formula that Jack Canfield talks about. He got it from somebody else, but it's pretty cool. E plus R equals O. So if you look at the outcome of your life, just like you're saying, look at your life. If you're not happy with some aspect of it, all of it, any of it, look at the two things in front of the O, the outcome, the event, and your response to it. If you don't like the outcome, change one or both of those, and you'll have a different outcome. Cool, huh? I like that formula. I've got your website up here. Just, the time is just racing by. I hate that about time, but it's just the way life is. I've got your website up here, and I'd like this question at the bottom. How much has self-sabotage cost you? That's something worth contemplating for our viewers that are on now, or if you watch this on the replay. And if you're watching on the replay, if you do me a favor, go #replay and let us know where you're watching it from. Is it down under? I talked to a friend of ours, Ron. I said, so what? You guys down under? What do you call us up here? He says, nothing. There's not a up there. There's nothing. They just call it US, the US, the UK, Europe. Right? So we're not a specialist, and they're down under because she's in Australia. Anyway, I digress. So this is how people can get a hold of you, Alicia. Your website's here. This is a sampling of your website. I'm going to scroll up a little bit more. You can see there's some detailed information that you can get to find out more about Alicia. And also, you can schedule a complimentary call. And listen, why wouldn't you want to do that? She's a wonderful human being. Lots of energies, and she's here to help, as I am, but she would do it with hypnosis. Is there anything that you would like to make sure that everybody knows about, or one thing they should think about from your point of view as a business owner, entrepreneur?
One of the things that really motivates me to do what I do is I've been in the struggles of the aspiring entrepreneur. I've been a business owner in business for a couple of years with some really difficult self-sabotaging stuff going on. And it can be really lonely. I say oftentimes it's like struggling in silence.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've come to find is that in many cases, the more successful somebody becomes, whether you've been in business for a longer period of time or you've achieved some level of financial success for yourself, the more people tend to hide and repress their stuff, right? There's this facade that we have to wear. Like, oh, well, I have a company worth, millions of dollars. Nobody can know that I have this secret problem. And where do you go? Who do you turn to when you're in that situation? And you start to see it spill over, right? It affects your relationships. It affects the interpersonal relationships with your employees. It is affecting your health. And it doesn't need to be that way. There are solutions. There are people who can help. And it doesn't necessarily have to be me. It doesn't necessarily have to be Phil, but there's someone. I always say, we live in this law-based universe. It is a law-based universe, right? The law of gravity doesn't operate 99% of the time, and 1% of the time we go floating off, right? Mm-hmm. This is a law-based universe. And one of the laws is the law of polarity. The law of polarity says you cannot have one side of anything without the other side of it also existing. You just can't. You cannot have an up without a down, a right without a left, a top without a bottom. You cannot have a problem without a solution, period. You cannot have a problem without a way to resolve that problem because of the law of polarity. That means if you're struggling with something and you want to change it, there is a way. There is. So my hope is that this will plant a seed in a couple of minds that maybe this thing that I've been struggling with, maybe, just maybe, I can overcome it, because you can. And sometimes you need to move from apathy, the OF, I'm stuck here, I'm never going to get out of this place, to hope. Maybe just maybe there is hope. And then from hope, you can go up into commitment, right? And that commitment is what we were talking about earlier, what you were talking about. Once you lock in on that, once you make a decision, I'm not going to let this stop me anymore, that's when you'll align with the people, the circumstances, the resources, whatever you need to get from where you've been to where you want to be.
Yeah, and the other side of this thing, I want to add on to that, because we're not go too far deep, because of the time, is you don't have to be in the bottom of the barrel. You can grab a rung along the way if you're going that way, and stop. And the way to do that is to reach out and connect with somebody like Alicia or myself, or like you said, anybody who's in that space. But be as what I've heard Canfield say in his, he says, you need to be an ask hole. It's okay to ask, because nobody really can read your mind. Go out and seek help for your business, for sales, marketing, breakthrough, like what Alicia does with hypnosis to help you get there. Don't sit on it. Time goes fast. Like this show it's over time, but it's not quite time to wrap it up, which is going to be real soon. But your life is happening too. It's not stopping. So don't wait for it. It's going to end for all of us at some point in time. So why not live it to your highest potential? Alicia, I'd like to say thank you for being on here and sharing a bit of your wisdom. I know in 30 some odd minutes you can't grace us with everything, but you certainly did give some insight, some confirmation to some things for me and to our viewers. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
Wow, wasn't that wonderful? She's an amazing woman. You know how to get hold of her. The information is right there. It's her name, AliciaKramer.com. And I put this up because one of my mentors many years ago introduced me to this concept, and I still think it's wonderful to share it. And the reason it's a big U and not an O is because you are wonderful. We just encourage you to go act like it and live into your wonderfulness. If you need a hand with somebody, go ahead and ask. Get help. Having somebody help you can accelerate your results a lot sooner, and be solution-oriented, not problem-focused. And I think you'll find things will go a little bit easier for you. Thanks for being here. If you liked it, share it out. If you know somebody who would be a great guest, please introduce them to me. I'm happy to help share the word.
I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.